how to prioritize self-care in your life and what that looks like for you.
Oh my gosh. First of all, I see self-care as being a part of making sure that you are whole and healthy enough to really be able to help others, right? And so sometimes we learn self-care as kids and we get so caught up in life and in the world that we kind of lose parts of us, right? And so I think self-care really is a part of making sure that you are the best version of you, right?
Yes.
And so for me, self-care, because I'm a woman of faith, really starts with making sure that I'm grounding myself in prayer, right? So you talked about, my grandmom and my family's really love for God and desire to make sure that he is first and foremost and the foundation for everything in life.
Yeah.
And so I come from that standpoint, right? And so even before like that grant that I just submitted, thank God it's over, right? But even before working on that grant, I literally keep, interestingly enough, I keep a bottle of blessed oil right next to my computer at all times. And before I start working, I usually invite God into it. So I'm like, God, you know what is needed. I am your child. This is the kingdom assignment that you have given me to do. So Lord, I invite you in and I ask you to breathe on whatever it is that I'm doing. And God kisses it with his favor every single time. And so I think the more we invite God into our everyday activities, the more we give him the ability to kind of, and my pastor taught on this on Sunday, favor. We talk about the favor of God, and it really is God really showing how much he demonstrates his delight in us. And demonstrated delight is the best thing that we as people of faith could ever have. God saying, you know what? This has never been done before, but you're a history maker, right? And you're a trailblazer, right? And you're able to defeat and defy the odds because it's God demonstrating his delight on us in everything we do. So for me, that is like the best thing ever.
And just such a affirmation of all that you're doing, because you are a trailblazer and you are a change maker in this world. So I love how you were able to share that. Confidently setting boundaries. We talked about this. Your time at Adelphi, probably not a lot of boundaries.
No.
And we all experience that. So in our own lives as well. So we can relate to that with each other. But talk to me about confidently setting boundaries and what that has looked like for you. You're very protective of your Sundays, which that has, I think, rang true for you. But talk about the boundary journey for you.
For me, boundaries was, I always wanted people to be okay. I am naturally a caregiver, right? And so my PhD is in social work. And so because I am naturally a nurturing person, I always wanted to make sure everybody around me was okay. And oftentimes that meant I would do things that were against my true self. It was against my true north, right? They were, I'm not saying I did something that was against my values, but I did things oftentimes that I knew I probably should not have because they were not healthy for me. So that whole boundary setting thing was something that I had to learn, and life kind of hit me hard and forced me to learn it. And so for me, what that looked like was I love taking care of people around me and making sure that people around me were okay and people around me were comfortable. And that oftentimes meant that I was self-sacrificial, right?
Yes.
To my own detriment. And that meant that, I found myself doing the work of 2 full-time people, right? And regardless how much I worked, there was always a desire for more. And because I was seen as someone who was competent, who always delivered, the more I did, the more I was given to do. And that helped happened across all domains. It happened at work. It happened in my schoolwork. It happened at church. It happened amongst my friends. It happened amongst my family. Bern was like the go-to for all things and everybody, right? Until my body literally is like, no, stop it. Like, we can't do this anymore. And so literally This was in the middle of me analyzing my dissertation data. Actually, during data collection, I ended up with an earache. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my ear's hurting. Go to the ENT. And my otolaryngologist was like, I don't want to freak you out, but looks like you've got a tumor. It's not cancerous, but you've got to take care of this as soon as possible. So here I am analyzing data on women who have been victimized, right?
Yes.
By their intimate partner. And I now have to stop and figure out what this now means for me. I was completely devastated, Melissa, because no one has ever had a major health challenge in my family, and especially not this young, right? And so what I found out was the kind of tumor that I had was something that people twice my age have, right? Yes. And not only do people twice my age have it, but Melissa, literally less than 2% of the world's population are diagnosed with this kind of tumor.
That's wow. That's crazy.
And so, I'm trying to figure out like, okay, this is like a showstopper. This really this really could mean the death of me. And by the time we found it, Melissa, it was already in my cranial cavity. So I'm like, oh my God, it's in the same place as near my brain. Wow. And so like total freak out mode. The doctor's like, listen, I am literally the world's leading expert. And he says to me, I need you to trust me. I'm going to treat you like I would treat my kid sister. And as a Black woman in the healthcare system, right?
Absolutely.
Who has to navigate the waters of gendered racism, I'm wondering, are you all going to give me the best kind of care and quality of care?
Can I trust you?
Absolutely.
Because history tells me I can't.
Absolutely. And my mom, who I adore, was unable to make it to the city with me to the doctor's appointment. And I literally collapsed in my doctor's arms and he's hugging me. I was completely devastated. And he was like, do you want a hug? I'm like, yes. And it forced me, Melissa, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, not because I want people's sympathy, but I'm bringing this up because I want us as women to do better with setting boundaries. It should not take a life-altering health challenge for us to do that, right?
Yes.
And so it took that for me. And so me now, if it is not consistent with what it is God has given me to do, if it's not consistent with my kingdom assignment, the answer is no. If someone asks me to do something and I pray about it and God himself doesn't give me the green light, the answer is no. And no is a complete sentence. And no is my final answer.
No period.
No period, not a no comma, not a no semicolon, right? It is no period. And if you keep asking me, the no period turns into a no exclamation mark, right?
It's not a question mark.
It's not a question mark. It turns into exclamation mark. And so I have learned to be more protective of my sense of self and my sense of well-being. And I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by mentors and people who care about me, the person, not just me, what I can produce. And as a woman that is, who's in academic settings or a woman who has been in corporate, it is so important that you have uplines and managers and bosses and colleagues who care about you, the person, and who are going to protect those parts of you, who have access to places and areas that you don't necessarily have access to, right? So my bosses have access to doors that I don't have access to, and rooms that I don't have access to, but they can advocate for me and they can protect me and they can tell people, Bern is awesome, Bern is great. I don't think you should give this to Bern. Like, this is too much for her. No, this is not going to help her in her career. It's not just about what we need. It's about what she needs and how her needs can help us equally. And to have a boss like that, he has been very curative. It's been a godsend. And so boundaries are something that I have been forced to do. And, because I'm feisty, like I can be, right? I'm so used to like scrapping and fighting battles for myself. And I've learned to, you know what, Bern, it's okay to not say anything. If a person's going to be disagreeable, sometimes silence is your best answer. And it's no sense in getting upset or angry or frustrated, those are resources you don't need to invest. That's not a good investment of your sense of self. And so I've learned that silence sometimes is the best answer. It's okay to not say anything.
Yeah. And not everything is for you. And I would say you found boundaries in a setting you weren't expecting to find boundaries too, as you transitioned from Adelphi to Columbia, which is always a pleasant surprise, I think, when we're not expecting those things. And this ties exactly into taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. You are exhibit A of what happens when we don't do that. So what are the practices you have in place now to protect yourself from?
There are tons of practices. So first of all, I love making sure that I'm taking care of my physical health. So first spiritual, then mental, then physical, and then I can take care of other things, right?
Sure.
And other people and other priorities.
Right.
But one thing I do that, in addition to prayer, we have family prayer in my family. And so every night, 10 o'clock, my family is praying, and we're praying about, different things. And, my favorite scriptures, I'm reading, my favorite scriptures. We have a series of devotional scriptures that we include. And then I have some favorite scriptures of mine that really do empower me to be the best version of me. And I think when you believe in you and you're surrounded by people who also believe in you, I think that's also healthy. I am of the belief of Jesus plus therapy. So, right, therapy is
God-gifted therapist with those gifts. Let's use them.
Have to, because sometimes what we see may not be the best perspective, right? And therapists help us to process and help us to level set. And it's very curative, right? And so we go to doctors, physical doctors. Why not go to mental health practitioners?
Absolutely.
Make sure that we are healthy, because if you're not mentally healthy, it ends up impacting your physical health as well.
Oh, 100%. Exactly. And again, why do we have to get to these breaking points? I mean, I started this podcast and I talk about in my story, I got to a breaking point. We as women have got to stop doing that to ourselves. We have got to, from the moment we set foot on our purpose in our life, early 20s, teen years. I mean, our teen girls, our preteen girls need to be hearing this message that self-care is not selfish, and being your best version of yourself, it is necessary, and don't let people tell you any differently. And you already hear so many voices against that. I think we have to be loud with that, and we have to be bold with that, and we have to proclaim that and keep feeding it to them, because they're going to get so many voices that are telling them otherwise, especially as Black girls and women in this country and brown girls and women in this country. You just don't get the same kind of treatment. It's scientific. I mean, we have data. I don't even know how much else we can say. And you're such a champion of that. And you, as amazing, incredible as you are the last person in the world, I would think, as just knowing you, that would have confidence issues, but you've battled your own confidence issues.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes. A million times. Yes. Right. And so, before I go into the confidence issue, I also want to punctuate that self-care is also a journey, right? So I have not arrived. I have learned post the 3 surgeries, post the radiation, I have learned how important it is to enjoy the journey, right? And so since the surgeries, I go and I talk to my doctors, and the first question they're asking me is, Bern, how are you having fun? How are you enjoying life, right? And so I literally, before I talk about my physical health, they're literally asking me about my emotional health and what am I doing that's fun? What am I doing that's energizing me? And so I get so now that I literally go to see Broadway shows now, right? I'm going and exploring the city. I've been to Central Park, which is something I live in New York. How come I've never been to Central Park before, right? Yeah. I'm going to Central Park. I'm going to museums, right? These are all things that I've never allowed myself to do.
Wow.
Even while working on this grant, one of my collaborators or partners in writing is who I would call her, because we were both working on our own grant together.
Sure.
She would say, we would finish our writing session and she'd say, okay, Bern, what are you about to do? I'm like, yeah, I'm about to go teach class. I'm like, what are you about to do? She said, girl, I got to go see my esthetician. I'm like, your esthetician? Honey, we're in the middle of a grant. And she would say, Bern, I've got to take care of myself, because if I'm not taking care of me, then how can I take care of this work? And so surrounding yourself with women and with people who see self-care as part of, as it not being selfish. It's part of the process of being. And self-care is not just the spiritual, right? Because oftentimes women of faith will think that self-care is just prayer. It is just going to church. It is just having devotions. It's more than that. It's how are you allowing yourself to free yourself? What makes you feel like you are liberated? What are things you can do that bring you enjoyment? Maybe it is meeting girlfriends and going out for lunch, or maybe it is hanging out and going ice skating. The one thing that I absolutely love to do that I fell out of touch with, Melissa, is I love watching cartoons. I love watching cartoons.
I love that.
I'm like, oh my goodness, Tom and Jerry, where have you been all my life, right? And so literally reaching back and going back to the child in me and doing things like going to the children's museum and playing in bubbles. Those are things I love doing because it reminds me of the freedom of childhood that somehow along the line, I've kind of lost touch with. Right.
Yep.
And then when I get upset or I get stressed, I'll pick up my crochet needle and I'll start crocheting, because guess what? When I'm creating something, I feel free and it brings me back to the child version of me who in church, when service would get boring, and I know it's happened to every child, right? Every church baby, when church gets boring, right? What do you start doing? You start drawing. And so it brought me back to the creative version of me. And when I am creative, when I am fulfilled emotionally, then I have more in my tank to be able to give to other people. Absolutely. But if I'm constantly pouring out, then I am emotionally depleted. Yeah. I am mentally depleted. And what does that look like? It looks like Bern is short-tempered. Bern has little tolerance, right? Bern is not her happy-go-lucky self. Bern is actually wants to stay in the bed and sleep longer instead of looking forward to the day, right?
Yeah.
It is learning how to nourish the parts of you that you may have lost. And so I have had to get back in touch with those parts of me and learn how to enjoy life.
I love that so much.
Now that I've kind of grounded and learned the value of that and relearned the value of that.
Right.
I make time, once a month, I'm figuring out which set of girlfriends am I going to hang out with and go to dinner with, right? Or whose child am I going to kidnap? And I promise you I'm not really kidnapping someone's child, but whose
you would be the best anti-Bern ever.
Can I tell you? And that's something that I love to do, right? And so one of the things I started doing was I now do a lot of work with the Long Island Children's Museum here in New York.
I've seen you post about that. That makes sense now.
So what I do is I volunteer my time. The Long Island Children's Museum, literally, and I will go and I play in the bubbles, Melissa. That's what I enjoy doing. So,
oh my gosh,
and
that's wonderful.
It brings me back to the fun.
Yes, to the fun, which we lose so much. It's funny because that's literally an assignment that both Brady and I have gotten from our therapist. They're both individually with us, and we come out of our sessions. We're like, we're supposed to have more fun, and we're like, oh yeah, we forgot how to do that. And so we've actually being able to be focused on that for the first time in a long time. And it is important to kind of just keep us grounded and just live all of parts of our life. You mentioned, this is going to roll nicely into this, how we can support ourselves and other women in living apologetically. And I think that the whole breadth of your work is about that. So talk to me about that.
as a young lady, I've really, I struggled with my self-esteem. I struggled with it a lot in my 20s, especially. I was a young lady that I still remember growing up as a teenager thinking ugly ducklings become beautiful swans. I was not the young lady who was like popular amongst the guys. The guys never asked me out on a date in order to go to prom. I actually had to ask a guy. And the first guy turned me down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I scare all the guys away.
Oh man.
And I hated it. And I remember talking to one of my guy friends and asking, like, what is it about me that the guys never want to date me? And he said to me, as a teenager, he's like, Bern, he's like, you're the kind of young lady that guys don't want to date. They want to marry. And so we're saving you for when we're ready to marry. And I was like, that's sweet. That's thoughtful, but that's not making me feel good because I can't get a date. And I feel like there's something like truly, truly wrong with me. And so, in my 20s, I really invested the time to get in touch with who it is that I am. So oftentimes as women, we are looking outward and seeing everyone else's value. And we've not taken the time to do, as it said in the scripture, to sweep our own house and find the beauty and the gem that is within us. And in my 20s, I really started to take that time to find the beauty that is within and be okay with the fact that I have chocolate skin and my chocolate skin is beautiful, right? I love the fact that I have dimples. And so one of the assignments I gave myself was to look at myself every single morning in the mirror and then look to find the things about me that I loved. What were my
I love that.
Because we often look to see all of the flaws that we have. Like, oh my gosh, my nose is too big. It's too wide. It's, my lips are too thick. They're too thin. Oh my gosh. My cheekbones are too high. Or I wish I had, a cleft in my chin, or, my eyes are too brown or too hazel. Like, find out the beauty that we have. Like, who are you and what makes you beautiful? And when I gave myself the ability and the freedom to find out and get in touch with who I am and what made me beautiful, it made life all the more better, right? And that's English, I know.
No, but that's true though. More better. I think that's proper English.
it made life, more better. And it really did enrich who it is that I was. And it started to give me confidence in myself. And then as I became more comfortable and saw my beauty, what I found was I was attracting people toward me who also saw the beauty within me.
Yes.
Right? And so I can expect sometimes other people to see what I don't see, or other people to take the time to invest in things in me that I would not have invested in me. And so instead of crying on Valentine's, which was like the worst holiday in life for me during my 20s, I started to say, the fact that I didn't have a boyfriend, it's like, you know what, Bern, you don't have a boyfriend. And this was before they developed Galentines. There was no Galentines back in those days, right?
Oh, yes.
Before they developed Galentines, I would take the opportunity and I would go and get myself chocolate covered strawberries, and I would light candles, right, around my little apartment, and I would set the atmosphere and I would put on music and I would affirm myself, right? And I did things that made me feel beautiful. And I wanted to be with me. And as I wanted to be with me, other people wanted to be with me. So I had to be okay with being alone with my thoughts. And sometimes when we've gone through life and we've all have our little baggage of traumas and isms that we've all experienced, but sometimes, and oftentimes what I have found is I have filled my life with so much busyness that I never took the time to unpack the things that hurt me in my past. Right. And so that stillness and getting attuned to the things that hurt me, the things I don't like, and the things I like. Right.
Yes.
When I'm able to really unpack that and process that and get down to the essence of who it is I was created to be, I was then able to attract the goodness. But it wasn't until I did that work.
It's so important. It's so important. I mean, and how we show up in all of our relationships is rooted in how we feel about ourselves. And we cannot show up as the best version of ourselves if it doesn't first start with us. And it just goes back to that whole work that we talked about of self-care and nourishing ourselves and being the healthiest version of ourselves. And the joke is on the culture when they don't get that from us, because when they're trying to tell us otherwise, it's just so, so important.
I literally had to take the time to spend with me. To realize the value and the gifts of who it is that I am. And to really kind of, there's a passage in scripture where there was a woman who literally had to sweep her house to figure out the treasure that was in that house. And but to then understand the beauty of my chocolate skin and how wonderful it is and vibrant it is, and just understand and appreciate the fact that I have dimples and there was nothing wrong with my nose or nothing wrong with my eyebrows or my hair, that I was beautiful in the skin that I was in, and that I was perfectly imperfect, and that was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. Isn't that it? And we'll talk about that. It's the layered part of ourselves, and embracing all of those. It's so important, and cleaning those up, cleaning up the wounds and processing the pain that came with them so that we can be the truest sense of ourselves and who we are.
And to your point about, processing those wounds, right? And so there is a difference, Melissa, between a wound and a scar, right?
Yeah.
And so, I told you that, I went through 3 different surgeries in January. Here we're now in October. And I now have scar. I have a scar on my neck, right? From the surgery. The scar is a scar now. It's no longer a wound. And the difference is that after the surgery, I took the time to process it and to heal. And so often, and what I found is, and this is very practical, but it really does impact us in the mental realm as well as in the spiritual realm. It has implications toward both, right?
Yeah.
When we take the time to heal and to uncover the wound, right? And not let it sit underneath the gauze. I still remember the physician coming in like 3 days after the surgery, and it's like, I'm going to take this gauze off. And I was like, oh my God, you're going to take the gauze. Like, I was in total freak out mode. I'm like, oh my gosh. First of all, it hurt. Second of all, it was ugly. Third of all, like, do I trust you to take this off of me? So I had to go through that process of trusting the physician.
Yeah.
Right?
Will you handle my wound with care?
Yeah. And being courageous enough to allow him to do something that I was scared to do myself, but I was there. So there was a process of the trust, and there was a process of allowing me to be. And if I tensed up, it hurt more for him to take the gauze off. So I had to relax.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when we are really processing our pain, we've got to open ourselves up, right? Open our souls up to be vulnerable, to allow ourselves to feel the pain. Because if we keep things covered up, it's going to take longer to heal.
Yeah.
So not only do I have a scar on my neck from the surgery that's healed nicely, like literally I was talking to my mom a couple of nights ago, and she was like, let me see your neck. And I looked, showed her my neck. She's like, wow, that's healed nicely. You can hardly tell that there's a cut on your neck.
Wow.
And then she's like, well, let me see the scar on your stomach. The scar on my stomach, Melissa, I kept covered for so long of a time that it literally is discolored.
Oh, wow.
And so it doesn't look like a part of my body. So I had to be okay with taking the gauze and the materials that I had covering it to let it get air.
Yes. And breathe.
Let it heal, to let it breathe. Right. And so if we're not processing the pain, we're not letting it breathe.
Yeah.
It takes longer to heal. Yeah. And the longer it takes to heal, the worse off it is going to be in the healing process for us.
Yeah.
And so as it is in the physical, so it is in the mental, and as it is in the spiritual.
Yeah.
And so we owe it to ourselves to process the pains that we've had in our past, whatever those pains are, and to allow ourselves, no pun intended, right, to feel it and to be okay with it and to acknowledge it. This was a part of what made you who you are.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that.
No.
There's no stigma in that. It's still, your scars are part of what make you beautiful. But as long as they are your scars and not your wounds.
Yes. And that's such a great differentiation. And Scars to Your Beautiful was our theme song for episode 2. So I love that you spoke to that because it's so true. And we cannot advocate for anyone else if we can't even advocate for ourselves. I mean, if we can't show up for ourselves, we are certainly not going to be equipped to show up for anyone else. And for the kind of work you do hard emotional labor. It's very, very difficult. And for you to show up as your fullest, best self, to do this work, the justice that needs to be done to it, you have got to be dealing with all of that stuff on a regular basis, or it could take you out. I mean, it's tough stuff.
Absolutely. I still remember, Melissa, so I started off as a clinician working with survivors of trauma, ranging from domestic violence and sexual abuse to molestation, and helping them to process that. And really what drew me to this work, were a couple of traumatic events that happened with friends and people who I knew whose lives were prematurely snuffed out as a result of intimate partner violence victimization. And being around so many women whose lives were adversely impacted, and realizing that there were very few people who were doing this work for Black women, right?
Yes.
And so I'm a member of a special interest group with researchers across the country. And there must be like 80 or 90 of us who are doing this work. For intimate partner violence victimization. Some of them are doing this work globally. But when I look to see the number of folks who really were focused upon Black women, I can literally count it on one hand.
Wow.
And I'm like, we've got to do something. If I want to see a change, it really has to begin with me.
Yes.
And I became more determined than ever after experiencing close friends who experienced tragedy and losing, one of my fellow cheerleader friends from high school from domestic violence. Like literally her husband killed her in front of their teenage daughter.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And realizing, Bern, you're devastated, but you haven't seen her in 10 years. And realizing how much more devastating her family must be feeling, right? For this man to unload a barrel into her. And the whole clip being unloaded into her and at the mall, right at Thanksgiving. It was like Black Friday. And literally there was nothing anyone could do, right? She had gotten the order of protection. So she did all the things she should have done, right? She got the order of protection. She made sure that people knew what was going on, and he still killed her, right? And understanding the dangerousness of this work, I still remember, although I was a clinician who treated survivors and who worked with survivors, I still remember that first interview that I had with the woman. And that interview, Melissa, went 3 hours long. And at the end of that interview, I was in such shell shock that I literally cried after calling my best friend and then calling my mom and processing with them. I remember saying to God, God, I need you to help me because I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this work. That I know is critically necessary, that I know is life-saving. But God, I don't want to lose me while I'm helping other people. And
just that I'm advocating for these women. I am trying to do my work to empower them. But if I take myself out in the process, then I can't do the work.
I can't. And, and so there were things I had to put in place to make sure that I was taking care of me.
Yeah.
So my boss would constantly say, Bern, are you in therapy? Okay, yes. Are you finding a therapist? Okay, yes. Okay, great. You're where you need to be. There's no way you can sustain this level of work and the intensity of the work and the life-saving nature of the work. Because some of the women that I've worked with as a researcher have literally been in life or death situations, who've literally been, I can't trust any of these providers, but I trust you, the researcher, because one, you look like me, two, you actually believe me, and three, I actually feel like you care about me. And so those are oftentimes barriers that women, Black women, brown women experience when they're looking for help. And so how do I now use my position as a Black female researcher who was a clinician treating this population of women? How do I now use that to advocate? How do I use my positionality to now advocate for these women who may not have as loud of a voice as I do, who cannot amplify their experiences? And I've had people even within this past year, that, a couple of weeks ago, because this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, is in October, nationally speaking. And so I put out on LinkedIn one of the first theories. And so I'm really grateful and fortunate to have done this work, because literally what I've been able to develop with my colleagues are the first set of theories that explicate or really explain what's happening with Black women when they are looking for help. And so with these set of theories, Melissa, we can now develop interventions. And so it makes me question, how is it people were developing interventions when good interventions hinge on theories? There were no theories that explain what was going on with these women. It's no wonder these interventions were failing, because no one took the time to dial it back to do step one. Right. And so the problem, the privilege and the pain, or the pleasure and the pain of doing this work has been, I get the pleasure of seeing how this work can really literally save women's lives. The pain of this work is sitting with the women in their stuff, if you will, in the midst of their pain, and being comfortable in their pain with them. And I promise you, had I not been able to sit in my own pain, and to process my own pain, and to unpack my own pain, there's no way in the world that I would have been able to sit with this population of women in their pain, and to help them process their pain, and to help them get to places and areas of support where they could truly, truly be helped and served and supported.
Yeah. And you cannot live unapologetically if you don't have people listening and believing your story and providing you resources, because they're constantly making you feel like you should be apologizing when it's really them that should be apologizing for not servicing you. It's just such an interesting dichotomy, conundrum, all of those things. But you said something really important there, being able to sit with them in their pain and not take it on yourself, and not walk out carrying that pain on your own body, and learning how to sit in pain, process pain, move through pain, so that you can release that, so it just doesn't keep storing up within you. Wow. Powerful, powerful stuff. You probably, as you continue to do this work, I'm not even probably, I know you do, have to learn how to say no. We talked about no period earlier, but the importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values in everything you do, in terms of kind of helping you parse that out of what's for you and what's not.
Yeah. I mean, a part of that 20s journey was me coming to ask two core questions. And I've learned to ask those two core questions of not of just myself, but whenever I meet a person, right? I'm asking these two same questions. Question number one is, who are you? Question number two is, why are you here?
Yeah.
And what I've learned in this journey is to add a third question. Why are you here now?
Ooh, that's really good. The now is really important, because the why are you here changes in different seasons in our life. So if you don't put in the now, you might be answering a call to something that isn't for you anymore.
Absolutely. And that's what I found myself doing, Melissa. So part of, going back to that boundaries was not only was I doing things that was good for people 5 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was okay for me 5 years ago. But as I picked up other tasks and other responsibilities, I was not saying no to things that I had normally said no to.
Wow.
And so part of my journey was knowing who I was in which season, right?
Yes.
The word of God says in Ecclesiastes, and this is not Bible study by any stretch of the imagination, right? But to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heavens. So who are you? Why are you here? Why are you here now? And then what season burn are you in and compared to what it is the person needs from you now, right? Because people are in different seasons. And if you're in a season where I am not, do I have the capacity? I need to check within myself. Do I now have the capacity to be able to pour into you and to give to you and to share with you in this way? And is it going to be harmful to me?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think that's a question we have to ask every single time. And we don't. We just, as women, we go all in and we don't ask until it's too late and all of a sudden the harm's done. And instead of giving from an overflowing cup, we're trying to extrapolate something from an empty, dry cup. And I think that's one of the most important questions. I love that you pose that, is we have to ask ourselves first and foremost if this is going to rob me to a point. And it's a tricky one, I think, especially as women of faith, because you're taught to give. And there isn't a lot of conversation about what it is that makes it necessary for you to give. There's a lot of talk about sacrificial love, but that's not the same as self-sacrificial. And I think that we have to delineate between those terms because they're not the same thing.
They are not the same thing. And, to that point, Melissa, like I still remember, as I was recovering and healing from the last surgery, because the last surgery was a craniotomy, and that's when they literally drilled a hole into my skull and
oh my gosh,
and took out the piece of tumor that had made its way into my cranial cavity. And I still remember thinking, Bern, you sacrificed your sense of self and you knew that volunteering with this one organization was not good for you. You knew it had nothing to do with your core values. You knew it had nothing to do with your kingdom assignment, yet you did it. And not only did you do it, but you allowed people to mistreat you. And you did not love you enough to walk away.
Wow.
And so I had to come to a place where it's like, you know what? Jesus is the one who died and paid it all. Like, you should not have to give up your life, right? Because literally where the tumor was, Melissa, the doctors were very concerned whether or not I was going to have what quality of life I was going to have. Right. They were concerned whether I was going to have lifelong facial paralysis, whether or not I was even going to be able to do simple things like swallow my saliva and let alone swallow food, let alone swallow, and nourish myself. They were concerned. They never shared this with me until like 3 months afterward, of course.
Well, good for them because doctors don't always use that good sense. Sometimes they scare the heck out of us.
Oh my gosh. No, they didn't do that. And I still remember that last time I tried to negotiate and push the surgery off, my doctor, the lead surgeon, comes and looks at me and he sits down, which he had never done. He was always like, okay, Bern, you're fine. Don't worry. Yes, we can push it off. He sits down and I was like, do we have to do this craniotomy? I don't want you guys drilling a hole in my brain, in my skull. And he sits down and he just looks at me. He's normally happy-go-lucky. And he was like, Bernadine, there are no choices here. This has got to be done.
Oh, wow.
And when he gave me this, I call it the stern burn look. When he gave me the stern burn look, I knew, right? Okay, we've got to do this. But what I realized is you've got to understand your value. And when you come to a place where you understand truly who you are and your value, and understand that you are a gem, and understand that you are beautiful, and understand, yes, you have scars, but your scars are beautiful. And even with gems go through a cutting season. They
Absolutely.
go through
Formation.
Right? They go through a crushing. They go through that time. And everything you went through, nothing you've been through will be wasted, right? And so understanding what season you're in. Are you in that forming or norming season? Are you in the season where it's time for you to be presented? And understanding as a gem, because gems go through seasons, right? Understanding as one of God's gems, what season you're in, and being okay with that season, right? So my crushing season, you're crushing, oftentimes that crushing births a greater glory. And everyone wants that greater glory, but no one wants the crushing.
Well, you don't want to do the work to get there.
You don't want to do the work to get there.
Because it's hard.
And it is hard. And understand with every gym, you've got to dig really deep to unearth what's been there. And it's been there all along.
Yeah.
Right. And so understanding the beauty and the value of that, Melissa, has been a journey that honestly I am still on. Right. And so, a couple of weeks ago, I ran into one of my former classmates, and who says to me, we're at my first conference with psychiatrists, and I was super excited just to be in the room. But I was actually leading a panel discussion and sharing a little bit about my work. And it was a jam-packed room. There were like 90 people in the room. I was completely thrilled. And afterward, one of my former classmates comes up and is like, you know what, Bern, I just want you to know how much we in the doc program, how all of us students have always admired you. And like, you are such an amazing rock star. And I was like, dude, like, calm down. It's just me. I was like, no, Bern, you don't get it.
Yeah.
And then to have, and then 2 weeks prior to that, I was, at an emergent space with gender-based violence researchers, all of them BIPOC scholars who are doing community engaged work, and having someone who I admired as a top scholar come to me and say, Bern, I really admire you and I admire the work that you're producing and the work that you're doing for Black women, and really helping this population of women who've truly been neglected in the scholarship. Yeah. For her to come to me, and this is a person who is an associate dean of research at a high-ranked university. Wow. I'm looking at her and I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, for me, I don't take the time all the time when it comes to my work to look at the value of what it is I'm doing for Black women as it relates to scholarship. Yeah. I just want to do right by the women. Because there's a fine balance also, Melissa, right? So you want to remain humble, and you want to acknowledge who you are and your contributions. At the same token, you don't want to become arrogant.
Yes. Yeah, you got to put it out there. You got to get published. You got to get the word out. You got to not be afraid to, my work is important. You need to listen to me. But at the same time, not get lost in that identity either.
No, because I am not my work.
Right.
I'm me.
Yes.
So my work will come, my work will go, my work may change. Right. But I am still me. And understanding my value and my worth, even outside of that work. Yeah. And here's what I'm saying, like, after having been through and lived through what I call a roller coaster of a year for me. Yeah. I said to my girlfriend, she's like, Bern, how are you feeling? I'm like, guess what? I'm just getting started. You ain't seen nothing yet.
I am not even surprised by that. Not even surprised by that because of just who you are as a person. But throwing in, you went through all of this during COVID, for crying out loud. So like, if that wasn't crazy enough in New York, and then just throw this in. So wow. And I think that you have learned how to do this really well, but it's also really hard to do it as a Black woman, especially in academia and research, because people try to put their own version of this on you. But living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations of you, because I think you had to learn how to do that.
Yeah. I still remember, and hence one of my guiding mantras of life is I can show you better than I can tell you. I still remember when I first came to Columbia and people really kind of questioning my value and my worth and whether or not I actually quote unquote belonged. And, it would come out of folks in different ways like, oh,
Sure.
So I see, okay. And my thing was, I'm not a charity case. My boss said I'm good enough. I'm good enough. Right. And so my thing was, oh, you're questioning my value and my worth. I can show you better than I can tell you. And so in the first year of me being there, I won 2 national awards, not 2, I'm sorry. I won 4 national awards on my scholarship.
Oh my gosh. 2 times 2.
Yeah, 2 times 2. I won 4 national awards. I was fortunate enough to get 2 grants. So 66% of the grants that I applied for, I got them, 2/3 of the grants. So I applied for 3 different grants. I got 2 out of the 3. One of them I found out from the grant reviewers that I got a near perfect score.
Wow.
And when word kind of spread out, people stopped questioning whether or not I belonged. They were like, oh, Bern, we're doing X, Y, and Z. You want to write with us? Oh, Bern, we're doing X, Y, and Z. You want to work with us? And so the question of my value in my worth changed from, is she good enough to, oh my God, she's awesome and amazing. And so that's what people started saying about me. So it became easier for me to collaborate. And so, just understanding, again, your value in your worth. I am not my awards. I am not my grant funding. That's out of the overflow of who it is that I am.
Yes.
Right. And so,
right.
I have learned how to, in this season, in the past, year and a half now that I've been at Columbia, I learned the value and the beauty of balance, right? And to have shifting priorities, because we always talk about this wonderful thing called work-life balance. There's no such thing as work-life balance, right? What is your priority? Right. And your priority on Monday should not be your same priority on Saturday, right? And so we should not be living to work. We should be working so that we can live. And there's a difference, because we kind of talked about that earlier, right?
We did.
So understanding and investing time in your family, investing time in your core sense of self, taking time to laugh and to get back in touch with, what you enjoyed about life. Those are all important elements and guiding principles of living a fulfilled life. Because if you're not taking time and investing time in your relationship with your friends and your family, what I have learned is, it's great that I did all this work with my, for the survivors, but when I was home, it was my family who took care of me, right?
Right.
It was not, my academic partners, because most of them had no clue any of this was going on. It wasn't even my friends in academia, because most of them had no clue what was going on.
Wow.
They were my family members, and making the time to invest in those relationships has, for me, been very curative as well.
Yeah.
So that's so important.
Well, and I think I love your mantra of, I can show you better than I can tell you, because I'm just going to say it. My husband's been in higher ed academia work for his whole career, 32 years. I've lost track of something like that now. There's a lot of blowhards in academia. And they saying a lot of things, and it's like, but show me the depth of your work, and don't tell me what you think of that without showing me the depth of your work. I don't want to hear your words. I want to see what it is that your work is flourishing. Show me. Don't talk about it. Show me with your actions. Show me with your choices. Show me with your support. Because I think it's always so interesting how, you got questioned when you got there, but once you showed them, then all of a sudden, and I think, but I also think that there is a pressure for women, period, and also Black women, a lot of men, especially white men, can walk in a room and say their blowhard words and everybody just welcomes them in. And there is a distinct pressure. And so I think we have to adjust our expectations within that too, of like, I can do what I can do. And that's all I can do at the end of the day. And I will not kill myself to try to satisfy your unsubstantiated expectation of me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Time is valuable.
Yeah.
It is meant to be invested and not wasted. And so
yeah.
I don't have to, if I'm talking and telling you all the things that I'm doing, then I don't have time to actually do what I'm really doing.
Right.
I don't have the ability to make the substantive impact that I really should be making. So watch me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And get out of my way.
Like, Jesus didn't take time to even oftentimes, he didn't even take time to even acknowledge the Pharisees. Yes. Or the Sadducees, right? Yeah. He just did what he needed to do, right? And there were times he slipped through the crowds, right? When they were after him, he slipped through the crowds. He did what he needed to do. And he went to the people who needed his help the most, right?
Right.
And so I think that's where we get caught up into this kind of vicious cycle of needing to tell people and needing to announce. Don't announce, show them, right? Yes. Because the data is what speaks, right? It is, yes, I have the affirmation, but this is external affirmation from people who don't know me, who are looking at comparable work across the country and saying, of all the pieces we've seen, this one is the best, right?
Yeah.
And it is that kind of punctuation and underscoring that people can never deny.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't have to like me, but you've got to respect my work.
Absolutely.
You don't have to like the fact that I'm in this room, but you can understand, guess what? She belongs in this room, right? Yeah. And understand the value, right? And so I think, us having gone through COVID, and in addition to the summer of COVID, we also went through that summer of racial reckoning. And I think a lot of companies and organizations, academia included, are starting to, and I'm not saying none of them are where they should be right now. Right. But I think there is a reckoning of the value that we as women bring and we as women of color bring, right?
Yes.
Different to life. And when we are helping the people who've been the most marginalized, we really are being a good, healthy, and we're really fully servicing the country.
Yes.
Right? And just because I'm in a good place doesn't mean I have to oppress you. Right. And so that's not only is there self-empowerment, but when you are empowered, you empower others.
Absolutely.
And you encourage other people. You lift as you climb. Right. I don't just climb and push you down and step on your head.
Yeah.
You may help me get up to that next rung, but I'm also helping you to get to your next rung. And what does that look like? And what does that mean?
Yeah. And if we could all do that, wow. A work in progress for sure. But I'm so glad you brought that up. That whole rung piece it's this scarcity idea that's out there that is so unhealthy and dangerous, honestly. It's such a fallacy. And if we could just see the wisdom in what you were just saying, oh man, we could change the world.
And you know what? And to that end, I've gotten, on Twitter, people are always like, oh my gosh, Bern, you're always so affirming and celebrating other people's wins. And the one thing that I said to my classmates, and it's also another guiding principle that I live by, is that when one person is winning, that doesn't mean that I'm losing.
Right. Yes.
This is not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
When one wins, we all win.
Absolutely.
I say this is everybody's win. And so when I can celebrate you and your win, guess what? That means I may be next to get a win.
Yeah. And we're creating more space for more wins.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, if everyone will listen to that, just do that, guys. We'll be good. Yeah. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. And so just kind of circling back to that, because you touched on that earlier, but kind of circling back to that idea.
Layers. We are multifaceted individuals, and I am the sum total of who I was, who I am, And I've yet to tap into where I'm going to be. But I'll never reach the maximum of who I am going to be unless I've had the courage, really, Melissa, to excavate.
Yes.
And to truly to clean off the dirt and to process the dirt.
Yeah.
Because it's those dirty places that got us to where it is that we are now.
Yeah.
And all dirt isn't bad, right? All coal isn't bad, right? We're quick to throw away the coal, but the coal, after it's been under pressure, turns into diamonds.
Diamonds, yeah. Yeah.
And so understanding that and being okay with that and allowing yourself to go through that process, I think is the most powerful thing and gift that we can give to ourselves, let alone to the world and to the people, our families and our friends, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of that. And being okay to nourish the different parts of you, right? So I nourish myself spiritually, but just because I'm nourishing myself spiritually doesn't mean I'm nourished emotionally.
Right.
And so I went through 10, 12, 13, 14 years of nourishing myself spiritually, but not necessarily nourishing myself emotionally and mentally. And so if you don't, you gave a wonderful analogy a little bit ago where you talked about you end up as an empty pot. And empty pots end up cracked pots when the heat is turned up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you're a cracked pot, literally what needs to happen is you need to get pulled off. You cannot be used because anything you pour into a cracked pot, Melissa, is going to seep out.
It's going to leak.
And we end up leaky pots, leaking our hurt, our pain, our trauma onto other people. And matter of fact, we're leaking our traumas onto the people that we were ordained to heal.
Yeah.
We're hurting them. We're hurting the people that we were ordained to heal because we've not taken the time to make sure that we're nourishing the multiple parts of us. But when we do that, we're full, we're whole, we're empowered, and we're free and liberated to give other women, other people around us the freedom to do exactly what we did and the courage to do that because it takes courage.
It does. But it also, I like what you said about it gives other people the permission. I think, when people see us doing this ourselves, it opens the door for these conversations that you and I are having. And in turn, it gives other people permission to do the same. And that's an empowering feeling because we were built to live in community. We were not built to be on an island by ourselves. And you hear all this independence and not that necessarily a bad thing, but not to our detriment because we were built to build each other up, to show up for each other, to lift each other up in community and just that giving of permission. And that is an invitation. And, and that's really powerful.
And to that point, right, I'm of the belief that wisdom builds. The word of God says a wise woman builds her house and a fool plucketh it down with their hands, right? Yeah. And so I want to see everyone be their best version of themselves. Yeah. Right? Flowers don't look at other flowers and compete as to who's going to bloom, right? They don't say, I don't like the fact that you're bright orange and I'm red, right? Yeah. They don't say that you're yellow and I am a deep burgundy. It's mum season, right? So they don't say that to each other. They just bloom. And everyone blooms in their own season, right? Yeah. And I cannot expect a mum to bloom at the same time a rose is blooming because they're two different species of flowers, right? Yeah. Roses should not be blooming in this season, right? Yeah. My mom said to me, because we're in New York, my mom said to me a couple of days ago, my Christmas cactus is blooming. I'm like, because it's freezing here right about now. And even the Christmas cactus knows that it's way too cold right about now in New York, right? It is starting to feel like winter, right? And so I cannot expect a daffodil to bloom at the same season that a Christmas cactus blooms, right? Because when daffodils and violets are blooming, I know that's the beginning of spring. Yes. And so they're
it lets
not
us know what's to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not competing with each other because everything blooms and everyone blooms in their own season.
Yeah.
And if it's not yet your season to bloom, celebrate the person who's blooming.
Yeah. Because there's room for all of us. And we were made uniquely on purpose for that very reason. Such good words there. Thank you so much. In summary, in Living Out Feel, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers, the name of our podcast, talk to me about what that's looked like for you kind of in summary and how it affects the quality of your relationships.
For me, in summary, it's really making sure that I'm staying in contact with mind, body, spirit, and soul, which is the soul is made up of your mind, your will, and your emotions, right?
Yeah.
And making sure that I am nurtured daily from a spiritual perspective and getting my daily marching orders in prayer and in my devotions, right? And talking to God about what bothers me and giving it to him, right? And so that's the spiritual layer of burn that people don't see, but you will experience when you interact with me, right?
Right.
And then emotionally, it is making sure that I am connecting to the parts that make me feel free and like I'm enjoying life. Life should not be drudgery, right?
Yes.
We should not be going through the motions to live.
Right.
Life is so much more than that.
Yeah.
Life is meant to be lived bold and unashamedly. It is meant to be experienced and enjoyed. It is not meant to be a place that is anxiety provoking or fear provoking or a place that is entrenched with sadness and sorrow, right? We may have seasons, but it should not be full of that, right? And then physically speaking, right? I love to work out. And the one thing that I have that's planned for later today, my girlfriend, who's all about self-care, even when you're working on grant applications, has taught me, don't wait to do that. And so later today, I have a spa day planned with my mom, right? And so we're going to do a girls thing. We're going for massages. We're going for dinner. And we're just going to come back to the house and veg out with some candles and chill and just enjoy and just be and watch movies and laugh, right? It is being in contact with girlfriends, right? And making sure that you don't lose those girlfriend connectivities for those women who are married or are single. Just because you're married doesn't mean that you lose your girlfriends, right?
Right. And stop taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. It means that my girlfriends are still there. They're not my priority, but they're still there, right? Yes. And I still may have a girls' night, right? Once a month instead of like every other weekend, right? Sure. It means that I have different priorities, but I'm not losing who it is that I am, even for those women, right, who have children, right? How can you take care of your child and teach your children self-care? Because children, same-sex children, model themselves after their same-sex parent. So your girls, Melissa, are modeling how to do self-care, how to do marriage, how to do life from what they've seen from you, right? Yeah. And so it is.
And if your words and actions don't line up, your actions will be the one that decide how they go.
Absolutely. And they're going to call you on it, right? They're going to call you on it. And being okay with doing that and to live that and to be that. I can tell you it's a journey.
Yes.
That takes courage, right? Yes. Because you have to unpeel those layers of pain. And just like onions, I still remember, right? You know, I went through my layers of pain in my 20s, but in my 30s, I had to come to another series of pain that I had not yet uncovered and unearthed. And so I had to unlayer those and give myself the freedom to be okay to do that. Yes. And if that meant I had to cry in prayer, then I had to do that. If that meant that I cried in prayer as well as in therapy, then that meant I had to do that, right? Yeah. And having a therapist who knows you, who values you, and who appreciates you is the best gift you could ever give yourself.
Yeah. 1,000% agree. Could not agree more. I have one of those too. I don't know what I'd do without her. Honestly.
Love her. Yes, absolutely.
Honestly. So we're to our rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Prayer, running, watching comedies. Oh my gosh, I love comedies. And spending time with my girlfriends and goofing off with them and getting in touch with the child version of me. So I love bubbles. I love
that you love bubbles.
Those things nourish me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
I want to feel happy. This has been a roller coaster of a year. And I literally just said to God last night, I was like, you know what, Lord, this has been a humdinger of a year. I just want in the next 6 months, I just believe that, there is a pain in healing that, and I know you said rapid fire. I'm sorry. I'm going totally.
No. That's okay. Brain, right? Rapid fire is very subjective.
But I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I don't want to always have to felt the pain, because there's a pain in healing that you go through that we don't always talk about.
Yeah.
So healing was painful. So I want to be happy. So I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. I want to be nourished. I want to enjoy life, and I want to be free. Right?
Yes.
Those are my 5 rapid fire.
I love that. Those are beautiful, just like you. Bern, thank you so much for the time today. I could spend hours and hours and hours with you. You are a gift to this world. You are a gift to Brady and I, and even our girls who have all met you. Our various girls know you at various levels, depending on their time with us in New York at the time. And they heard this episode, they're like, "Oh, we can't wait to hear that. That's so cool." Because they hear about what you're doing through us. I know Kylie actually, I think, follows, because a lot of the work she does is aligned and in the same stratosphere as the work that you do. But you're just such a blessing. I mean, honestly, Bern's one of those people where you walk in the room and she just fills it with love and care, and you feel like you're the only person in the world when you're in a conversation with her. She has this great ability to set down whatever she's doing and just hone in with you. And that's just such a rare gift. And I'm so honored that we get to share you with our audience today, and your work that will be in the sources that you've talked about. But I am lucky enough to get to call you my friend. And that is such a gift. And so thank you for your time. Thank you for who you are in the world. I wish you talked about 6 months of just not having to go to the doctor, just free from all of that. Oh my goodness. And just continue being the beautiful soul that you are. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I wish I was there with you, right? We're in studio, but we're separated by time and space. But just, if you can just envision me giving you a warm embrace right now.
Absolutely.
And then running through the hallway and say, Brady!
I know. We talk about that all the time. Honestly, he wishes he does not have a Bern here, and it is sorely, sorely missed. So, podcast audience, like I said, you want to check out the sources. You can find us on all of the socials: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok. We're available on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify, on our website, embracinglayers.com, for all the information about Bern in this episode. You don't want to miss this. You're probably going to want to listen to it a couple times. Bring pen, bring paper, take notes, because there's just so much to learn from this beautiful woman in the world. So thanks so much for being with us. Thank you again, Bern, and have a great week.